Well, travel insurance is probably one of the first lines that was embedded
Hmm.
in the likes of airlines and online travel agencies. So for us, we that's how we distribute our products is embed in the purchase path of whether it's be online travel agency or airline or even if neobank. So it's that's how that's how we're building our platform is to be able to integrate with partners and sell embedded insurance.
So, that can actually be a follow up question to the main topic. So, let me roll it a little bit back and we'll start with introduction so people will know who you are, what you're doing, and why the Battleface. The first time that we met and we talked about it, it's like Battleface. It's a cool name. You put your Battleface on, but how about Sasha? Give us a quick background about yourself and how many years you've been in
Mhm.
the industry. How and then, of course, how did you reach to work on Battleface and travel insurance? But before I'm like
Sure.
already giving all the answers, hey, the mic is yours.
Mike is mine. Well, then I'm just going to be yapping away
Go for it,
for a long
man. Go
time.
for it. That's what we are here
You
for.
got to interrupt. You got to interrupt me.
Sure,
I hate just talking, talking,
no
talking.
worries.
Um,
So tell us about
all
yourself.
right. Originally I'm from Russia. That's where I was born and raised. And when I was 16, I had a chance to go to Wisconsin on the exchange student program for 1 year in high school in a small town, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. While I was there, I I had a chance to well, actually, I had a chance. I met different people in town, and Stevens Point is a pretty small place. And at the same time, there was a small company back in the day called Travel Guard, and that's where it was born out of. And Travel Guard founder, who's essentially the grandfather of travel insurance concept here in the United States, his name is John Noel. He offered a scholarship for me to go to University of Wisconsin
Hmm.
in exchange for working at Travel Guard in their call center and essentially talking to customers selling travel insurance. And that's how I got into travel insurance. And now, fast forward to 43 years old, I'm still selling travel insurance.
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but it sounds a little bit romantic. Do people still give grants and scholarships to employees, to young employees, and investing in their future? Do people still do that, or is that
Uh,
like because it sounds fantastic, a little bit out of a movie?
it sure is. They do, I think. I mean, I want to do that. I would love for Battleface to be in the size of a company that we actually invest in the future of our employees, and I think it's obviously I'm the example of that. But John, I think, was very unique to his time because it was in the middle of '90s, and to his place as well because it was in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. And John was a believer of diversity and inclusion. And I was not the only one that received the scholarship. In fact, that scholarship fund still exists. A lot
Hmm.
of students, either from inner city of Milwaukee or from rural areas of Wisconsin, or even different parts of the world, from Kenya to Russia, students having a chance to go and receive full scholarship, room and board, 100% paid,
Wow.
at the local university, and most of them ended up working at the company.
That's a beautiful way, to contribute to the local university, to the local community, and later on, of course, you build the brand of the company. It's fantastic. I think that we are missing
Mm.
those elements, especially when today there is a competition that we don't understand from a strategic point. Let's call it the human capital that bring the
Hmm.
best, bring the brightest, and cultivate it, and by that enrich the area by not just pouring in. capital, but the human capital for that. But sorry, I'm digressing here. So Battleface, or before we talk about Battleface, which apparently you sell travel
Mhm.
insurance, which people are like, okay,
Mhm.
what is travel insurance? Can you give us a little bit of orientation? You know,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. So travel insurance essentially is a policy that protects you while you're traveling. And in the most simple words, every time you travel 100 miles away from home, it doesn't have to be international, but also here in the United States domestically, you can essentially protect yourself from anything unforeseen that could happen, whether it's be accidents or you're prepaying $10,000 for your vacation and you want to insure that investment in case you're not able to travel on your trip, and you want to get your money back. So there's different components behind the travel insurance policy that is so interesting because it's a comprehensive market because you protect yourself, you protect your financial investment, and you also even protect your equipment while you're traveling. And traveling, my expertise specific to travel insurance is emergency medical assistance, which I think is the most important part once it comes to travel insurance. If someone is traveling and they're hurt or they're in the hospital, I would be the person sending their ambulance to pick them up or bring them to another hospital or bring them back home. And that's what I ended up doing within the travel insurance industry for decades. And that's kind of like the essence of travel insurance is being able to get help while you're traveling.
So what's it? So we talked about basically insuring the trip or the expense that you already put on the trip.
Hmm.
So the tickets, the hotels. Then there is the medical part. But and earlier on we talked about one of my favorite uh, travel insurance companies, a passport card that they are
Hmm.
based in Israel, Germany, I think Canada and Australia. Not sure about the last two. And for them it's
Hmm.
pure medical, right? They give you a
Yeah.
debit card. That debit card always sits
Hmm.
in your pocket, so you have that physical presence of the brand. If something happens, they are filling it up with money. You pay the hospital and done. Now in the
Yeah.
US it's a
Yeah.
little bit different. Why?
Hmm.
And you touched about it. So what is the travel insurance here in the US? And I'm not talking about, hey, you must check or not check, decline or accept the travel insurance from, I don't know, Allianz or whatever that may be when you buy an air flight ticket.
Hmm. Um, so Passport Card is a great company, by the way. I love their concept because they were innovators of their own time, right?
Hmm.
Back in the day, because at the time actually is how do you prepay your customers' expenses without a need for them to pay for it themselves
Such a
and then
pain.
file for reimbursement,
Hmm.
right? So they were brilliant in figuring that problem out because, in fact, it was an issue within the travel insurance. That was before the days of Venmo, PayPal's, and all of the solutions that are out there nowadays. And second point, you're right. Every market is absolutely different internationally. Uh, there's what we call mature markets for travel insurance, where almost 100% of citizens, when they travel outside of their home country, they buy travel insurance. And there's not mature markets for travel insurance. And the United States is what we consider a not mature market. And the history of travel insurance here is primarily travel insurance was started again with Travel Guard and John Noel days decades ago. It started out as a financial protection against your trip cost because back in the day, we went to a travel agency, we put a deposit down for our 2 week vacation that we were saving up for so long in order for us to travel somewhere with our family. And also back in the day, people didn't travel as much or into as diverse places as people are traveling to nowadays. And so in principle, travel insurance was specifically to protect your investment and how do you get your money back in the event of cancellation or something that happens that prevents you from traveling. Then eventually travel insurance started to add on benefits on top of the trip cancellation part of it. What happens if I'm traveling and I'm sick? What happens if I'm traveling and I need to be evacuated? What happens if my baggage gets lost or delayed? And so, in what we call within the travel insurance space, is the comprehensive approach to travel
Hmm.
insurance. It doesn't matter where you're traveling to, it's the exact same policy, just filled with these benefits. And third component to the American market, for the longest time, consumers here didn't know what travel insurance is all about. And in fact, it's actually an interesting point that when John wrote the business plan for travel insurance, he was working for a large insurance company in Wisconsin. And the management group of that insurance company threw the business plan away and said travel insurance will never take off. And so he took the business plan and he started it on his own in the basement of his house. And then he had but prior to that they did a focus group of a bunch of people, and I think it's like, let's say it's 100 people in the room, and every single person said that they'll never buy travel insurance, and that's why that insurance company said that they will never take off. But then John returned back to the group, and I don't know if it's true or not,
Hmm.
but that's his words. It's like a movie, right? He, like, as he's walking out, he went back and he's like, wait a minute, why wouldn't you buy travel insurance? And most everyone said, I don't know anything about it. So, and that's where he thought that that was a big opportunity. And to this date, in the American market, a lot of people don't know what travel insurance is actually all about. And primarily, I think it has to do with from the medical perspective, where, for example, medical benefits are the number one driver in international markets when you buy travel
Hmm.
insurance. Here, because of private healthcare, a lot of consumers thought that their domestic insurance policies would protect them while they're traveling internationally as well.
So isn't that considered anything like that is outside of network because of the weird structure that we
Mhm.
have here?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And nowadays, of course, it's different. Millennials and younger demographic, because of Obamacare debate, all of a sudden, a lot of Americans really understood what health insurance is all about here in the US. I mean, 20 years ago, nobody even said a deductible or a PPO network. Now everyone knows what it is, and the mentality is changing. But also, prior to COVID-19, I think about 20% of Americans bought travel insurance when they traveled.
Hmm.
Now that number is up to 60%. COVID-19
Hmm.
and global disasters in general have a big effect on the awareness of the consumers.
Okay, okay, we can dive into that. So we have a travel for pleasure versus business. We have the impact of COVID. But before we dive into all of those things, which I'm sure is going
Hmm.
to open what I love, which are statistics, let's talk about
Sure.
Battleface. What's
Hmm.
Battleface? How did you get that name? And after working for so many years in one company, what made you to say, I'm going to start my own thing?
So it was again a magnitude of different things as usual. So Travel Guard eventually was sold to AIG, and I ended up working for AIG for a long time, doing the exact same thing, building out international operations for AIG, and building out throughout Asia, Latin America, Europe, and Africa, and different parts of the world. And my specialty was essentially it's the emergency medical assistance, and it's building out the call center part where you're traveling, and no matter where you are in the world, you ended up talking to somebody in Wisconsin, for example, to get help. Then I left AIG to build out a very interesting company called Tangiers International, which was a subcontracting company to AIG and still is, in very hard to reach places, in Middle East or Africa, in conflict zones, where the medical assistance part could not be handled by phone. You actually had to be in face to face with the hospital or the patient and be on the ground. So my job was to build out these operational boots on the ground kind of services in really interesting places, from Iraq to to Burma or to Philippines and different parts of the world, and that was very interesting job because all of a sudden you're actually in front of the customer dealing with their problems face to face, and that's a company that developed quite rapidly, and we were doing this work for not only for AIG. Eventually, we started doing this work for lots of big insurance companies, and primarily dealing with complex medical claims, not just simple travel insurance. And while we were doing this work, we started to see a big shift in the travel landscape. The travel industry has gone through a lot of changes, like the Airbnb alone has disrupted how we travel, where we travel, how we stay, and how long we stay. And many travelers couldn't find the right policy because all of a sudden consumers started to travel to obscure destinations, doing adventurous things. And specific to Battleface as a name, we were dealing with a lot of journalists who were going to a conflict zone, and they kept saying, we go out to a battlefield, we put our face out there, and nobody wants to insure us. And it's true. There's a lot of different demographics out there that insurance companies are staying away from, and in fact, they're actually really, really interesting travelers, and very, very from the risk perspective, are actually quite well prepared travelers as well. So we were at the time we were just solving the problem, and it was one of the co-founders of Battleface, Chris. He was in Israel at the time. Actually, I remember him calling me on the phone, and we were going back and forth on the name, and it was "Travel is a battle. Put your face out there." So yeah, we're talking about Battleface, but in the name, and I guess the premise of the company, right? So I mean, kind of like in a segue of why we are doing what we're doing, that we basically started to ask question why that you have a family that is vacationing in Tunisia, for example, on the beach, and there's a terrorist attack, and the family gets hurt, or somebody dies, and their claim gets denied because of war and terrorism exclusion. Or why is it there's a young kid that decides to go to Belize, and then while they're on vacation, uh, um, uh, he or she decides to go scuba diving and has an accident, and their claim gets denied because that particular activity is excluded on the policy. Or why is it a business traveler going to a certain destination and not able to find a policy just because it's based on the destination, because it's an advisory list of do not travel to? Because in our world, in the travel insurance world, the do not travel exclusion can shift really, really fast, So, for example, just because there is a pandemic, like Ebola exposure in a certain country, then all of a sudden it's declared as pandemic, and all of those incidents invalidates your policy. And so, and what we wanted to do is actually, how can we fix that problem from the consumer perspective? So we're looking at the insurance product perspective because we are so passionate about travel insurance. We know it's extremely valuable. We've saved thousands of lives before and helped people from around the world. But then all of a sudden, the policies that I loved so much became extremely useless. And we went to Lloyd's of London, and we started to dig into a problem, and it really comes down to pricing. What underwriters really wanted to have is an ability. It's not that they were afraid of those
Hmm.
risks. What they wanted to do is walk away from the one size fits all type of product, which is now filled with so many exclusions, because people started to travel so many different ways. They wanted to have a tech platform that can dynamically capture the customer's needs and deliver the right products at the right price, real time.
So
And that's essentially what we started to do.
cool. So what is the structure of the company? Are you an MGA, global MGA? I don't know, a Lloyd's broker, underwriter?
So we started as an
Hmm.
MGA, but in the UK equivalent cover holder.
Okay.
So what we knew is that our we because we know the space so well, we knew that what we wanted to do does not exist in the market. So as a broker, you can't go and find it. And then we knew that we had to convince underwriters what we're doing is going to be profitable for them. And in order to do that, like one of our co-founders, Paul, who joined from Lloyd's of London, he actually brings 40 years of underwriting experience. He created the algorithms for actual underwriting. Then another co-founder who is a developer, Anthony, he actually created the tech platform that could dynamically price based on those algorithms. And it took us a couple of years to actually put it together. So, for example, Ukraine, we mentioned
Hmm.
today, super awesome country to travel to, extremely, extremely safe, goes into a conflict with Russia, not so safe. So underwriters are still interested in underwriting Ukraine as destination, but you have to have a rate for it. And many companies don't have that capability. And that's what we were concentrating on. And so in order for you to do that, you have to be an MGA with full authority to essentially have the trust of Lloyd's from financial backing perspective for the claims to be paid at 100%, um, and have the ability to create your own products that eventually you want to distribute. And so yeah, we're international, we're a global MGA, but now we also have an insurance captive. We're backed by reinsurance companies like Greenlight,
Hmm.
so we're starting to retain our own risk as well.
It's always interesting to see that the reinsurers are a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of innovation, especially on products, because let's face it, they are looking for new risk to write and
Mhm.
sorry, not to write, to reinsure. And it's very interesting that they were like the first one to create this insurtech and to fund the insurtech space. But shout out to
Mhm.
Brian and all the good fellas there. Now, you mentioned a few co-founders. How many co-founders are you, and how did you come together? Because you spent 25 years at
Mhm.
Travel Guard, AIG. You mentioned one of your co-founders that was 40 years with Lloyd's. How did you guys come together to start Battleface?
Just industry, right?
Okay,
So we all work together one way or another. So it's travel insurance is a very
small.
specialized
Hmm.
market, and it's and a lot of people because and especially from especially with my experience, working with so many underwriters at AIG, eventually they move on and work for Chubb or Lloyd's of London, and it's kind of like a rotating space, and we all just work together. So it just continues to be the cycle of the company. So, for example, our chief operations officer, that works at Battleface. His name is Mike. We worked together for 20 years at AIG, building out AIG. Then he went on to build out Berkshire Hathaway, and then now he just joined us again. And then so it's kind of like the industry
It's
thing,
a
I
small
guess,
industry.
in the
It
network.
is.
It's a very small
Yeah.
industry, yeah, and and so yeah, and that's kind of how we all came together one way or another. So,
So
but
basically,
yeah, to answer your question, it's about four
yeah,
people.
yeah. No. So basically, well, one day after work in a pub, we met, we talked over a few beers and a nice steak,
No.
and that's how it happened. No,
No. We all somehow work together, or were introduced by people that we worked with. And nowadays, it's actually that's the culture of the company. It's just there's so many new co-founders that are coming in and adding new elements to the company,
Mhm.
that we don't even use the titles like the co-founder or the founder. We just go with what we are and what we're responsible for.
Yeah, very cool. How long have you been in business?
Um, so we officially went live on January 2018
Hmm.
as a cover holder.
Yeah.
But like I said, insurance is such a complicated place. It took us a couple of years just to get it off the ground. So, but I just always, for simplicity aspect of it, I say January 2018.
So 4 years, you had a little bit pre-COVID, and then COVID hits.
Hmm.
Now tell us what we all
Hmm.
want to hear, the statistics and how how COVID impact travel insurance. By the way, before that, are you doing private or business, or looking at both of them?
Right. Right now, private, and we're getting into business because that's a different market as well. That's kind of like the interesting point about travel insurance as a market as a whole. It's a massive, massive market once you start slicing it in different components. Business travel accident is a different market, but it's also a fast-growing market within the travel insurance
What is
industry
the size?
altogether.
What is the size of travel insurance?
So leisure travel, kind of like the individuals traveling, short-term trips, not expatriate travel, not international private health insurance type of market. Leisure travel is at about 40 billion, billion dollar marketplace globally.
And the business?
Business travel accident, I think it's 38 billion right now, $38 billion. So that's on top of 40
Yeah,
billion.
of course. And that's excluding expats and all that stuff. So just on the
Yeah,
travel,
exactly.
travel,
Expatriate.
come back.
That's right. Expatriate travel is also a very interesting space, but it's completely different from travel because it becomes more of private health insurance space because you're and that's kind of like the within the travel insurance you got to be really careful what you're trying to offer and what your specialty is. But expatriate travel is also requires quite a bit of knowledge,
Mhm.
and it's more of a international private medical insurance space.
So, how did COVID impact over the past 2 years? It's been 2 years. So, there was a shock. I'm sure that there were all kinds of shocks that went into the system, and the system adopted to that because, well, we are traveling again.
Yeah.
What was the impact on your
So
business?
So when we were first starting out, we wanted to create a platform that essentially was agnostic to everything that's happening around the world, and before not agnostic, but can price out dynamically based on the events. And at the time, we were thinking about terrorist attacks, adventurous activities, um, government travel warnings, and we were also thinking about pandemics. But pandemics to us were short-term pandemics like SARS, bird flu, Ebola, right? And it's kind of like all regional stuff. And what we wanted to do is create a dynamic place where we can just price out properly. So it's a win-win for both customers and underwriters, right? So, and on top of it, actually, and I forgot that what else we've put into consideration, the cost of medical care and the cost of medical evacuation. Because for us, we had that data. And so, for example, the cost of medical care here in the United States is vastly different from the cost of medical care in Vietnam, right? So pricing should reflect that as well. And or if you're going to Antarctica, super safe place, but super expensive to get you out of there. so so that goes into the pricing model. Our entry into the market was specialty association groups and membership based organizations that really requires a lot of customization, and you can only accomplish it through technology. So if we were going to let's say International Surfing Association that has access to 25 million surfers worldwide, our entry into that marketplace was how can we custom build a product specifically for that association? Nobody else. And everything to do with the surfing world, because that's the demographic that doesn't care about lost luggage, for example, but they care about coverage for their surfing board. Or International Federation of Journalists, million journalists traveling at any given time. All they care about is medical and equipment coverage. They could care less about suitcase. They don't care anything else. They just want their camera to be covered. And so, and how do you apply that towards to these demographics? Because we, as a startup, one, we couldn't afford direct to consumer strategies because keywords are extremely expensive. They pay per clicks or paid campaigns. So of course we were available direct to consumer from direct to consumer model, but we did it from organic perspective, like links or articles and so on. And we couldn't afford the traditional distribution channels, airlines and online travel agencies, because minimum, in order for you to get in these marketplaces, they charge you minimum 60% upfront. And of course, as a startup or as an MGA, your economics are way below that. So you don't earn 60% from an insurance company doing what we're doing, or 70%. So that's more of a place for insurance companies, right? Because they can afford it. And that's actually another problem that we can discuss later. So that was our entry into the market before COVID-19, is underwriting specialty groups, and also working with groups like a company of 1,000 employees that travels around the world, and one single policy for them. Then COVID-19 happens. And of course, just like everybody else in the world, we're thinking it's one of those short-term things, but then it was not so much. And everyone stopped selling insurance on April 1st. That's around the time when COVID-19 was declared as a pandemic. And what we started to see, a lot of customers coming our way, because another component that we've developed in our system is that you can buy our policy while you're traveling, because that's kind of, and so a lot of people that were stuck were left without travel insurance. Either they couldn't buy it, or their existing policies became invalid. But that's a very small number. And then I think July of 2020, that's when people started to travel in Europe, and no one was offering travel insurance because of government travel warnings or COVID-19 or different exposures. We were one of the few players that were actually offering insurance. And because I still think it's because we figured out the problem for journalists, we became the darlings of the media. So the exposure that we got, the organic exposure in the media, was phenomenal. Like, I remember a friend of mine calling from London and saying, like, can I swear?
Yeah, go
I guess
ahead.
not.
I'll beep it later. Yeah, man. It's like, do you want to use bloody?
She's like,
Let's use words that the American audience will less say. You can use bloody
yeah,
and stuff like that.
bleep, bleep, BBC is talking about you. And I'm like, really? So, and that's exactly what happened to us. So all of a sudden, we became a major direct-to-consumer brand overnight.
Eh? No.
So, over in Europe.
No, that's so cool. No, it's amazing that you managed to catch the knife while it was falling, and actually that's leverage you, because you knew how to leverage that. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anything that the different regulations and mandates by the government, especially on travel, help you to leverage your success?
Yeah. Of course, all of a sudden, the marketplace became even bigger because many countries around the world started to require travel insurance upon entry. Israel was one of them, or Costa Rica, and different parts where before, for example, when I was traveling with a Russian passport, when I apply for a visa, I need to have insurance, right? Proof of insurance. But now it's for everybody, American, Canadians who don't need insurance. I mean, visa to enter the country, you still need to have insurance. And I that's the element that really helped as well. And that also increased the level of awareness of travel insurance. But believe it or not, Brexit also helped because all of a sudden UK lost access to European
All
healthcare.
right,
And
man.
so
Well, without.
so a lot of geopolitical kind of matters
Mm-hmm.
or geopolitical events to help with the sale of travel insurance. So now that we're growing, now that we can actually, now we have kind of like, we've developed our infrastructure. Now we've proven our fact to underwriters that our, what we're doing is very profitable for them. Now there's more room for us to offer more benefits to our customers and benefits to our partners. So now we're entering the space of B2B. And of course, in the COVID-19 times, many partners didn't know what they were doing for the last 2 years, right, with their own business models. And all of a sudden, there's a big push for delivering valuable products to their customers, because everyone in the world realized that the travel insurance products, or at least not everyone within the travel insurance world or travel world, that the travel insurance products that they've been selling for a long time essentially were useless. I still remember this New York Times article on June 17th of 2020 or 2020, where it says, "Is travel insurance worth it?" And the author, and it's a homepage of New York Times, just is destroying every single insurance company out there, from Allianz to AIG, and basically saying that it's so heavily driven by exclusions that there's absolutely zero value to the customer. Commissions and also payout claims. So,
Just
and
a
that's
second,
where
let me
the
get it right.
heavy,
So the, let's call it the publishing platform, whatever that will be, they ask for
yeah.
70% on the premium.
hmm
Are they allowed? Because if you're taking part of the premium, we can call it a commission. And that's basically, are they an agent or they already created that? And
Yeah, they become an agent. So in the travel industry, at least in the United States,
uh-huh.
well, actually many countries as well around the world, if you're booking travel, you can operate under an insurance company's license,
Okay.
right? And it's a simplified
Now,
process.
in most PNC, we know that it works that you get, the agent will get between 10 to 20%, really depends on the allocation and the structure and relationship.
hmm
In travel, they get 70%, is
Sometimes 80.
sometimes even 80. I know life insurance, we start from 100%, 50, then 5, and almost nothing for the first 2 3 years. But travel is almost 80% on the premium. Wow, that's
It could be, yeah, yeah, and that's where regulators came in now.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know if so. A couple of years ago, a lot of first of all, there was a congressman in the U.S. Congress. I forgot his name, but there was a huge push from the government level saying this is just
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? Insurance companies cannot pay out this much money upfront in commission. A lot of insurance companies actually prepay commissions as well. So in order for them to enter the relationship, because they're all beating against each
Yeah.
other, right? But at the end of the day, regulators are coming in and saying the customer is the one that's getting hurt. So now, if you Google and you type in Class A lawsuit, Delta, Allianz, United, AIG, American, I think it's
Yeah.
Allianz, you'll see it, and it's all about because of the travel insurance policies that were sold
Mm-hmm.
that misled the customer about the value of travel insurance, because when the pandemic happened, claims were denied, right? So this is where a lot of things that came out in the open. But some countries are flat out coming out and saying, like Australia is a good example. Uh, there's a mandate where you cannot pay more than 20% in commission to distribution partners, because at the end of the day, it's the customer that if that get hurt, because you're in the purchase path, you've got an embedded insurance, you don't have enough time to understand what you're buying,
Because you
right?
want to close the
And you're
ticket.
just saying
Yeah.
you close the ticket, and in the airline interest is just to do the sale as fast as possible, right? And you're saying yes or no, and you think you're protected because in the concept of travel insurance, you're saying that it's travel insurance, I bought it, and then
So
your claims get denied.
so this is the perfect example of when embedded insurance is actually um, doesn't work for the best of the customer. When I had bound, that was one of the use cases that it's about, okay, you embed insurance or turn insurance into a seamless step within the customer journey. It's all about the customer journey, which is the customer wants to buy an airplane ticket. They want to travel. That's their journey. It's not to buy insurance. And I
Mhm,
used to have a lot of arguments with different executives that they were like so obsessed with, oh, I need to bring them to my customer journey. And it's like, no, 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 no. They have a journey. They don't care about insurance. Insurance is something that they tick on the way, right? They want to go
mhm,
from home to work and from the office back. They
mhm,
don't care about the fact that now they need all those extra steps that you called your customer journey. They need the insurance.
mhm,
And here we're actually realizing, and it's a great example, that by providing the check and without realizing the math and the economics behind it, that actually the fact that it created sort of a monopoly that they need to bid on a specific channel, it disservice the policyholder. because they are stuck with one option,
100%.
and the competition on that channel and the cost makes it so expensive, so they need to cut or to increase the price or to reduce the coverage. Yeah, no, that's
Mhm.
I love it. Thank you. That's a great example. And I you just
It is, and in the defense of companies like AIG and Allianz, they've perfected the embedded model, right?
Mhm.
So insurtech companies, had nothing to do with the embedded model within the travel insurance space. It's actually traditional insurance companies that have had an embedded model for a long time. Like for example, at Travel Guard, we were the official provider of Walt Disney travel insurance, and that was the white label right approach. So the embedded model always been there. What really just destroyed the value of insurance is how greedy the distribution partners became, and then the pricing war starts, right? So then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, one insurance company is offering 70%, then another insurance company coming in and saying, well, I'm going to offer you 72%. And then it just goes, and it's all about the numbers. It has nothing to do with the product,
Mhm.
has nothing to do with the services. It has nothing to do with the value to the customer. It's all about how much these distribution platforms can grab up front.
Okay, so we have conventional or legacy products. We have
Hmm.
a Battleface. Then there are the different
Hmm.
distribution channels. We cover them. Then from time to time, I get all kinds of decks from new startups that are trying to do parametric and all kinds of different permutations. What do you think about the parametric insurance that is dealing with the flight cancellations, or there is a flag, I lost the bag, the luggage and stuff like that? How do they
Uh,
compete, or what's their niche in the market?
well, for me, I think, of course, it's just an interesting extension of technology. For me, parametric concept is not insurance. For me, parametric is technology, right? So how can you track all of these events and pay out immediately? Because there's still a component of the underwriting and decision
Hmm.
making. So, and then
It's
as an
basically saving
insurance
money on
and
on
based on
claims.
events, right?
That's
So
it.
that's right. So for me, it's still an insurance traditional kind of aspect of insurance, right? So let's say it's a travel delay coverage. It's
Hmm.
still a benefit within the travel insurance space. Parametric technology can help you to track the event and pay out immediately to the consumer. What I have a problem with, this is my problem with the parametric
Yeah.
insurance, is that a lot of companies are trying to avoid regulatory environment
Hmm.
by not calling it as an insurance, but a financial benefit. In some aspects, it's true. But most of the aspects, it's not, because from the consumer perspective, there it doesn't matter what you call it; it's still an insurance benefit. And then on top of it, um, a lot of people end up underinsured if you're just selling one component of a benefit, and because travel insurance is just so diverse, right? It's not just the missed connection benefit that you need to offer. You also eventually need to offer baggage coverage or medical expenses, trip cancellation, and so on. So, and going back to our initial conversation, where consumers don't really know much about travel insurance
Hmm.
to begin with. So, is this your duty to actually deliver the relevant products and the relevant benefits? And I think it's yes, because you're the expert and you should be delivering the right products to your customers.
Okay. So we talked more than we planned. So let me ask you the last question that I'm asking everyone. Can you please give us a recommendation? It can be a life hack, it can be a book, a show, whatever you think that people should pay attention to.
Um,
Whatever, you know.
yeah, well, I mean, like TV show is probably easiest. Like I just finished Yellow Jackets. I thought it was a phenomenal TV show. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I
It's
haven't. I
uh,
haven't.
it's uh, yeah, it's pretty surreal, pretty cool. It's just a group of uh, female soccer players that were, I think they were soccer players that were in a plane crash.
Hmm.
And they took place in 1996. Kind of, so that's when I graduated high school.
Yep.
So it was kind of like a flashback between, like the what I knew and today, right? And so it was it was a fun show to watch. Can't wait for the second season.
Ah, that's a
It's
good
kind of
one.
like a mix of Lost.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mix of Lost and survival and kind of interesting, pretty good acting as well. And but yeah, I'm a big fan of kind of like the weird TV shows, and like my absolute favorite TV show is Leftovers. I don't know if you've ever seen it,
No.
or Twin Peaks
Twin
from back
Peaks,
in the day,
yes.
or
Well, Twin Peaks
right.
was a
So
revolution in terms of
yeah,
it
yeah,
was an avant-garde in that concept of how to approach the murder and the small town and the big, yeah, it's fantastic. And how
yeah.
they,
So yeah, I would.
yeah, sorry.
So yeah, I think yeah, I'm a big fan of the David Lynch and like the obscure movies and TV shows, and just something that actually takes you away from the day to day,
Mhm.
and that's the kind of stuff I like.
Well, because I think that we are the same age, I will also throw a Northern Exposure. That was also more or less at that time, also a brilliant
Hmm.
series that they had back in the day. Okay, cool. Sasha, thank you very, very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, man. It was very fun.